Okay, today is October the 22nd, 2007. My name is Tanya Finchum. I'm with Oklahoma State University Library, and we're doing a project entitled Women of the Oklahoma Legislature. And today I'm with Jan Collins in this wouldn't be.
South Oklahoma City.
South Oklahoma City. And she was in the House of Representatives, elected in 1984, and served one term.
One term.
And so thank you very much for letting me come to your home today.
Well, thank you for asking me.
It's been a pleasure. Let's start by having you tell a little bit about your childhood. Siblings and whatever.
Okay. Yeah, my father was in the service, so we moved around a lot. I had one sister, and she was 11 months younger than I was. We played twins a lot and got away with it, actually. We were very close. We moved a lot. I lived in 15 towns in 9 states before I was 19 years old. Went to 12 schools in 12 years of elementary school or secondary school. Was very interesting. Got to see a lot of this country. My mother was an extreme history buff. If we were anywhere near anything that was an American memorial, we were there. It was a great education, and it was a great way to meet a lot of the ethnic groups in the country. We lived in an Italian neighborhood, a Czechoslovakian neighborhood, a lot of neighborhoods with a strong ethnic flavor, and met people from all over the country and all over the world, really. In the service, you meet a lot of even foreign-born wives, and so it was just very interesting. I just think it was the perfect life for me. I'm kind of nomadic by nature, I guess. I loved going everywhere and seeing everything, and had a very close-knit, the 4 of us, our family was very close-knit, and it was very nice because I always took my best friend with me, which was my sister, and my parents were very supportive of anything and everything we wanted to do. They were just, I think, the greatest parents you could ever have. Myself, I think they were fantastic. And a little strict, but we needed the discipline, I guess. And I just can't tell you what a great life it was. I loved it as a child. I mean, I really loved it. And it's been I'm still feel strange about living in one place many, many years.
It's a lot. How long have you been in this one place?
We have been in this place 19 years.
Maybe.
And that's my record.
Well, how did you come to be in Oklahoma then?
My dad is from Oklahoma, so wherever we lived or wherever we were, Oklahoma and Texas, my mother's home and my father's home were based. We spent all of our leaves coming home to see family. We're very large and close families. And when he retired, we moved back here. I was 19 when he retired from service after 22 and a half years. He came back here, and we came here. And, of course, I met my husband, who is definitely an Okie. Wouldn't leave this state for anything. Although he did for career for a short time. We actually lived in Sterling Heights, Michigan, Huntsville, Alabama, and Tulsa before coming back to the Oklahoma City area to settle down.
Well, that's a mixture, too, from Michigan to Alabama.
I had already lived in Alabama before I married him. Not Huntsville, Selma. But I was familiar with Alabama.
Well, when did you get interested in politics?
I guess I was always interested in politics. I had one aunt who was very politically minded in Texas. She was unmarried, homemade, no children, and all of her interest was focused in politics. And she and my dad were opposites. He was the Republican, she was the Democrat. And they would argue politics forever. They loved to argue. And I guess I've just heard about it all my life. And I guess I was also kind of bossy and domineering as a child. And my parents, my friends always said, yeah, she's going to grow up to be president of the United States. So I think somehow I just acquired the idea that anytime I wanted to, I could be a politician. And never actually intended to do that. It was never a positive plan for me. But when my children went to school, I followed. I became sort of a number one volunteer in the Oklahoma City Public Schools and with the Oklahoma PTA. And through that, I got very interested in legislative action. As a result, I went down to volunteer to help in a campaign and somehow ended up being the candidate. Was not my intent to do that, but lacking a candidate in that area, the Republican Party just sort of said, here, sign this and you'll be the candidate. It was weird. I not only was the candidate, I ended up winning the race against all odds. Was kind of a deal with Republican coattails, Ronald Reagan coattails, actually. I didn't really know what to do once I won. I was very startled.
Well, how did you campaign? What kind of strategy did you have?
That was the strangest thing of all. The Republican Party actually did a little campaign school for us, which was very effective. Unfortunately, in the area I lived, a little north of here at the time, very much in the middle of the Capitol Hill area, a very Democrat stronghold. My district was 76% registered Democrats, 21% registered Republican.
And you won, though.
And 4% independent, right? The idea was to go door to door. There were many neighborhoods. When I tried to walk door to door, the police would stop me and say, you should not be doing this. This is not a safe neighborhood to be walking in. There were times when I tried to reach groups. I was just discounted as a candidate. So being a woman, to be a Republican in a district that you just couldn't do that, I was not invited to speak. I made 3 speeches. It was a very easy campaign and a very inexpensive one. But it worked well. I was very surprised when I won. In fact, so were my supporters. We didn't even have like a campaign victory party planned. My husband was on hand with hankies to console me. And all of us were a little bit surprised when I won.
What were you doing that night, though? Would you sit by the TV set election night or by the phone? Or
Oh, actually, no, it's a very compact district. That was one thing that was, it's South Oklahoma City district was very compact. And so we had 11 polling precincts. We just went and picked up the results. We were just at home, kind of waiting on the results, mostly family and a few friends. Nothing really big planned. We were just all sort of shocked into silence when we actually realized we had won.
and what'd you do the next day? Do you remember?
I don't think we
in.
did anything extraordinary, no.
Did you have a slogan? Campaign slogan?
Not in my House of Representatives race, no.
Were you the first woman to win that seat?
As far as we know, yes. I have not actually researched that to any degree, but no one actually could ever remember a woman winning it, and no one actually ever remembered a Republican winning it. So I don't think there was ever a woman before me.
And what was it like the first day you were sitting there being sworn in?
Sort of overwhelming. I was mostly just taking in the thing. I had actually never been in the state capitol before that. Well, before my election, I had been down there in between that and the swearing in. But it was just awesome. I was just trying to
Hold it together.
yeah, it was. I was just trying to learn all the names and faces and places and put them together and negotiate the geography of the building, learn all of that, learn how to get to my own office and back.
And where was your office?
At that time, it was on the 5th floor. It was the smallest office on the 5th floor, and we were sharing double. At that time, there was no 6th floor on the Capitol. There was no
Don't
dome. No, the 6th floor was more or less a couple of little nooks of attic storage. And we were on the south wing. I looked right out onto the little oil well, which was still there at that time. We had our oil well on the Capitol. I was very disappointed when they took that down. It was sort of distinctive to our state.
Moved it over to OHC, I guess, didn't it?
Uh-huh.
History Center.
I think so.
So the second year, was your office still there, or did it move?
No, it was still in the same
Same.
spot. My office mate changed. The gentleman that was my office mate in the first year changed parties, became a Democrat, and his office moved then to the Democrat side, or the floor, actually. They had on the 4th floor. And I got a new office mate.
Well, did you live at home?
Yes, I
You
did.
didn't have. You were close enough. You didn't have to.
Yes. I had a very
Right,
short
right.
drive to the Capitol, actually only about 9 miles.
Well, describe a typical day then.
A typical day, we usually started in the morning with committee meetings. I usually had 1, maybe 2. We used the mornings a lot to make the rounds, to go visit with each other and see what legislation was coming up, everybody's views on certain legislation, what we were going to deal with that day. Session usually started after lunch, usually at 1, and was usually over by 4 or 5, and at which time we debated, a lot. That was mostly the formal part of it. Evenings, I usually stayed until about 9 or 10 reading bills. There were, originally, when I first went in there, they do a nice orientation for freshman legislators. And we were kind of instructed to find friends on different committees. The committees look at the bills in more depth. And we were kind of instructed to get friends on every committee, make friends with someone we trusted on every committee to learn how we wanted to vote on certain legislation. And unfortunately, that was a good piece of advice that I failed to take. I thought I had to read every bill. I really tried to read every single bill. And so I would stay late very often reading bills. That was, there were many days that I didn't. In the early part of the session, most of the special interest groups will try to get you to come to a dinner or a meeting or something just to get to know you and you get to know them. I went to some. I was sort of advised that it's a good idea to go the first year, and then thereafter you can skip it because you'll know who they are and what they're saying and who you trust and who you don't trust and whose advice you want to take. So I tried to go to a few. I didn't go to a lot. But
How early would you get there in the morning?
Usually between 7:30 and 8.
Early. Did you bring the bills home with you, or you just left them at the?
Well, I tried to read as many as I could there. And those that I couldn't, I would bring home.
Do you remember the first one you presented on the floor?
Actually, no, I never wrote a bill that got out of committee.
Or did you participate in debates then?
To a degree, very seldom. I was more inclined to. Debate is is not the primary method of passing a bill. It's usually you visit with individual legislators, and
Decide how you want.
most people, by the time a bill comes to the floor for third reading, they have their mind made up how they're going to vote, and the debate is more or less just a presentation. We often went office to office just visiting on certain bills. You go ask someone who maybe had expertise in that area. Maybe if it was an insurance bill, you go visit one of this was the thing. We had 101 legislators, with 101 representatives. You have a good opportunity that every area is going to be represented by somebody who can tell you something very specific about that area and what the good points and the bad points are. You want to try to put in an amendment or anything, or if you want to do that, I did that, but I tended to rely more on what I read what I was told.
Were you on committees? You were on committees?
I was.
Which ones do you remember?
I was on education.
Which makes sense.
I was on the one I really remember, which was really strange, was having a brain glitch here.
That's okay.
Elections, was concerned with elections. Normally, everything that would go through this committee would be procedures for voting, procedures for registering voters, all of these sort of things. We had about 5 or 6 bills on those topics the first year I was there, and not one came through our committee. They were all assigned to a different committee, and I was very, very surprised. I could not understand why these were not being assigned to our committee. There were only 3 representatives on that committee. And not having looked for a prejudice against us, I was very surprised to find that we were all 3, well, we were 2 Republicans and 1 Democrat. And this was a strongly Democratic legislature. I was very surprised to find that the Speaker did not assign those bills to us simply for the reason that the Democrat side would not be the majority vote.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Were there other women on that particular committee?
No, it was 2 men and myself.
How many other women served with you?
8.
8 in the House.
There were 8 in the House.
In the House. And
4
then,
Republicans and 4 Democrats. We were evenly matched.
did you do much socializing with them throughout the day or after the day?
Some, I wouldn't say a great deal. I don't think any of us actually changed our social life because of the legislature too much. Our friendships, we were very cooperative and helpful. And one of them is back in the legislature that served with me, and that's now I'm having Rebecca Hamilton. Yes, I served with Rebecca, and she's back in the legislature, and I understand doing a fine job. She was a great researcher. Very concerned woman at the time, and I think she still is.
Did you notice any different treatment for the women, or was it being in the minority party more of an impact?
Being in the minority party was more of an impact. I did not notice a great deal of discrimination against us as women. One thing I did notice is we didn't get invited to the drinking parties a lot. They might have gotten a little rowdy, and maybe for some reason that was a normal prejudice, but there were a lot of legislators met and talked and bars after work, and we didn't get invited to that too often. Sometimes, but not too often. Maybe we just turned that down too often. I don't know.
But do you have a favorite campaign story?
Actually, that campaign was so brief, it seemed to me. It wasn't brief, it was long, in time, but it was brief in actual things. One of the things that really surprised me was that so many of the organizations, like the Oaks Club and the Lions Clubs and those, that candidates usually go and speak to, didn't want me to come and speak. And it wasn't that they were like openly hostile, they just wouldn't set aside a time for me to speak. And I was very surprised. The Southside Chamber of Commerce, I spoke there once. I only made 3 campaign speeches in that whole campaign. Believe it or not. I spoke at the Southside Chamber of Commerce and was later told that certain legislators said they would never speak on the same podium with me again. I didn't think I was that hostile, but maybe I was. I spoke at the Scheidler Wheeler Community Center and one other group, and that was a lot of military retirees, and I can't remember exactly who sponsored that. But anyway, I was very surprised at the number of people who just didn't even consider a Republican candidate.
It was a party more than
It was the party,
issue,
I think, more than the gender issue. I really do. I didn't feel that much gender.
Was it that same way the second time you ran? Did you have that kind of reception? Or second
yes.
time? Second time?
Mm-hmm. I really did. And I'm not the world's greatest campaigner. I'm not crazy about door-to-door campaigning because it kind of annoys me, and I kind of think it's annoying. But
So do mailers?
I did, and I did not have a lot of money. In fact, we always laughed. The campaign school that the Republicans sponsored said we would need to raise between $10,000 and $12,000 for these campaigns. I actually spent $2,999.61. I always said if I'd had another 39 cents, I could have had a $3,000 campaign. But didn't make that.
How much did you do the second time around?
I don't remember. Do you know that I still have my ethics commission reports though, so I could probably go find out. But it was more at that point when you become an incumbent. You have a lot more access
I've learned
to
that.
funding.
Mm-hmm. Well, what's your favorite memory in the House when you were in the House serving?
Oh gosh, it'd have to be the opportunity to have lunch with Ronald and Nancy Reagan. That was.
Well, how did that come about?
At that time, Maureen Reagan, Ronald Reagan's daughter, was very, very busy pushing the women's agenda throughout the world. Even we were having those African conferences and everything else, the International Year of the Woman and all that. And she wanted all female legislators to get the opportunity to meet her dad. So she was kind of arranging wonderful briefings. I mean, we got a briefing from every single department at the federal level, and she wanted to help all local legislators, especially to meld our agendas with the federal agendas in health care and a little bit ahead of her time, actually, on Homeland Security. At the time, they called it emergency management or whatever, you know. And weather-related and other emergencies too, weather-related emergency management. But she was concerned about the possibility of external struggle. I don't think she ever mentioned Iraq particularly. She was a little concerned about Iran even back then. I think she was a little concerned about North Korea back then. And China, you know, that we possibly could be in a defensive posture soon. And she wanted everybody to know and to try to get the states as involved as the federals in Homeland Security and housing, education, welfare programs, you know, how to take over Medicare, Medicaid, the difficulties that we all saw coming in financing those, and just to talk to her father about his agenda. I think she really wanted to influence his agenda more than ours. But anyway, she did arrange for female legislators from almost every state to come and have lunch with the Reagans. We were in groups of 60 to 75.
In D.C.?
In the White House small dining room. It was very impressive. Actually impressive. I spent a lot of time watching the waiters. They were a ballet chorus. It was unbelievable. It was just unbelievable. It was just an overwhelming experience. It's very formal and it's very organized, orchestrated, probably is the more correct word. Anyway, it was very enjoyable.
Get to shake his hand or
Oh, yes.
carry on
We
a
got to
brief
shake
conversation?
his hand, brief conversations. Actually, you know, every table actually had a cabinet member at it. We were in tables of 8, and every table had a cabinet member sitting there. My table, I had Haley Barbour, who is currently the governor of Mississippi. He was political director for the Reagan White House, and he wanted to sit by me because he wanted to ask me questions about Don Nichols' reelection. And the next table over was Nancy Reagan, and we could actually lean over and talk to Nancy. We were a little farther away from Ronald, but it was supposedly a draw thing, how you get in there.
Yeah.
And I actually missed one of the briefings because I couldn't get in. I don't know if you noticed on my sheet, but I don't go by my first name. I go by my middle name.
Okay.
So when I presented my driver's license for security clearance, I was listed as Jan Collins, and my driver's license says Ellen J. I had a little trouble getting in the door for security reasons. So I missed one of the briefings, and I was just surprised I got to get in. It seemed to be a big problem there. And since we gave our social security numbers and our IDs and everything else, but it was a memorable day. I was very surprised. I had to wait until they changed the badge to put my name right. Mm-hmm.
Well, was there a piece of legislation that you really wanted to push through and just couldn't quite get it done?
Yes, there was. There were actually two. One, I have a big problem with the retirement, some of the retirement bills. I thought it was highly unfair that teachers could, a teacher who has taught in the public schools and becomes a politician or a legislator can stay in two retirement systems. Many of them are making more in retirement than they made serving. I thought that was a little unfair since we don't offer that opportunity to any other career. And so I really wanted to kind of adjust that. I felt like that was a little unfair. And I was hoping to be able for servicemen to somehow shorten the timelines on the election process of the absentee ballot. You have to request an absentee ballot, I think it's like 90 days before the election. You have to have it back in 45 days before the election. I think that has been adjusted since then, but it was not adjusted during my term, but we tried to get that timeline a little shorter. It's people serving in a war zone or a foreign country really don't think about that local election that far ahead. And with today's mail service, I think it would be real easy to do that. One other thing I have always felt like is that we have way too many boards and commissions. We have way too many county employees. That sounds crazy, but for one who was county commissioner later, but Oklahoma historically set up counties to be within one day's horseback ride. It was telecommunications. It was communications and transportation. All counties. We don't need 77 counties now. We really only need 4. We need, I had hoped to divide the state down I-35 and I-40 and make 4 counties, and that would save us something like 197 county commissioners. Instead of 77 county clerks, we could have 4 instead of 77. And that's very doable.
And school districts are like that too, right?
Yes. We need county
Yes.
consolidation, and we have an excess amount of bureaucracy for things that, due to transportation and telecommunications increases, we can easily do and eliminate a lot of overhead. Just the overhead.
Did you have a mentor? Would it have been your aunt or someone different? A role model that helped you while you were in the house or to get you to the house?
I didn't really. I had several that helped, and I had a lot of people who took an interest strangely and helped. Al Snipes was very, very helpful. The chairman of the Republican Party was very helpful, Nancy Apgar at the time. But mostly it was my dad. My dad and my husband, they were very supportive and very bolstering, and they're very logical men. They're very logical. They're very down to earth. They were very helpful at just keeping me right on course.
Well, while you were working late till 9 o'clock, I guess your husband became a good cook or learned how to call for pizza?
Actually, yeah, he's always been very self-sufficient. He's never actually, I wouldn't say he cooks. He's more inclined to have some sausage and cheese or something like that. He loves peanut butter sandwiches. And he could subsist on Brahms hamburgers.
That was around back then too.
Yes, it was. And he took real good care of the kids. He's always been very, very good with the children. Very, very happy to be with them. He's a great dad and a very supportive husband. He's wonderful.
I was reading when I went through the newspapers looking for information about this, that you were for the right to work.
Oh,
You want
yes.
to talk a
Oh,
little bit
well, that was an active, very active campaign at that time. And yes, we were unsuccessful for several years. But here again, my mother's family were union organizers. And they really had a point. You know, the unions had a great point. But almost like every good idea, they kind of got overboard. The unions got to the point where they were tyrannical. And I thought they were driving a lot of jobs out of Oklahoma. They were driving a lot of, they were driving a lot of production out of the whole country. And so I felt like I was for right to work because I thought we should get a balance back. I have, it's a shame that people always have to go overboard. You know, they got to the point where they were taking more from the workers and the unions were taking more from the workers than they were providing. And they became top heavy with management and everything else. I just saw so much of that, and having gone back and forth, you know, trying to get the balance there, I was just very much in favor of right to work because it was killing the state. Construction and government contracts were just going crazy, you know. You had to work for the government in Oklahoma or you couldn't afford to eat because they were the major pushers of inflation. So now we have right to work. We could use a little more balance. Now we need some union things back, maybe. I'm not sure.
And then there was something about the House Bill 1114, the right to reserve the state legislatures to write all gun control laws. Something to do with gun control. I don't know if it passed or not, but
I don't remember that one. I do. Well, I remember the bill. Yes, I do remember the bill, and it did pass. The primary point of it, I don't remember having any controversy over it. The primary point of that bill, as I recall, was just that cities and counties could not restrict firearm carrying any more than the state. That was kind of to protect gun owners' rights from being overly restricted by counties and cities. And that was the only point I remember that, and I don't remember a lot of controversy about it. One that I remember controversy about, I got a lot of controversy. I got a lot of criticisms for a lot of no votes. But I'm very strongly feel that government doesn't need to be in about 2/3 of the areas it's in. People can handle that. And I don't think government should handle anything that people can handle without government, which is most everything. And I remember one that for some reason seemed controversial to a lot of people, didn't to me, but we have coal mines in Oklahoma. And there was a bill to give a 5% tax credit, I believe it was, to Oklahoma coal, which is pretty high sulfur, actually, over Wyoming coal. It was aimed, I'm sure, at OG&E and ONG and the utility plants. And I voted against that, and everybody thought that was I think I was the lone no vote. I think a lot of the legislators felt that we should give the in-state coal companies the boost. I felt like that was a free market issue. I prefer that my utility company buy the best coal at the cheapest price. So I remember some controversy over that. The one vote that I'd have to say that I regret is voting for the Ethics Commission.
Voting for it?
Uh-huh. I actually intended to vote against it. I voted for it more as a favor to Helen Cole and certain other legislative friends who really believed that it would be a great help. I don't feel that it's made a difference. I feel that it's created a new bureaucracy that is very selective in what it looks at, and I think the people are the Ethics Commission. I think voters are the Ethics Commission. I think we should require our voters to know who and what they're voting for.
Well, you weren't the deciding vote.
No.
No?
Oh no. No, it was, they wanted it unanimous. That was the whole point. It was very important that to some people that it be unanimous, particularly Helen Cole. And Helen had been very helpful to me, and I felt like, I wasn't going to win this vote. There was no way I was going to win it, so I could make it unanimous for Helen and some other people to whom it was very dear. And I thought they were misguided, but couldn't hurt. That was my one compromise vote. I generally didn't compromise.
Did she return the favor at some point?
No.
No.
I don't think I ever asked her to. I wouldn't ask someone to vote against their better judgment.
But what have you done since leaving office?
Um,
Ran another campaign of some sort.
Yes, I guess it was 4 years after I left office. Yeah, some people came to me and asked me to run for county commissioner down here. We had a problem with the commissioner in this area, and some of the gentlemen that were very involved from Norman came up and asked me if I would run, and I really wasn't too eager to do that either, but there was a reason I needed to do that, and that was kind of a gender-based issue. We had a little sexual harassment going on down there with our county commissioner, and a lot of people really felt that a woman would be the answer,
Yeah.
So when I found about 29 women asked me to run, county employees, I did choose to run, and I did win. I was very surprised again. That was a hot and heavy race too, although this area was pretty much evenly split, at least registration-wise. But there were 2 male candidates and I in the primary, and there were 4 male candidates, I think, on the other side, on the Democrat side.
Were you the first woman to hold that slot then?
I wasn't the first county commissioner
No.
in Cleveland County that was a woman. There was one in the 70s, actually.
The second then.
Mm-hmm.
Has there been one since?
I don't think so. At the time I was the county commissioner, there were 3 females in this state, and one was from Stillwater, actually. One was from Stillwater, one in Oklahoma County, and one here in Cleveland County. So I thought that was kind of strange that the 2 university counties would have one female commissioner.
Well, how long was that office then?
I held that office from, I was elected in 90, took office in 91 through 95.
A 4-year term?
Mm-hmm. It's a 4-year term.
Then what?
Well, right after that, Governor Keating appointed me to the Housing Commission. I was a trustee on the Oklahoma Housing Finance Agency for 7 years. My daughter and I had a little business for a while, a short time. We kind of say we can't actually stay in business too much because every time she opens a business, something drastic happens. And the first business she opened was followed very shortly by the Oklahoma City bombing. This business we opened down here was followed very shortly by the 9/11. We're afraid to do anything. It's catastrophic. But my daughter, who is very, very talented, had a dance studio, She's a licensed attorney. She was working for a major corporation as an attorney. She had a private practice. She had the dance studio, and she had this little specialty clothing wear for cheerleading and dance wear. And so she became pregnant, first child, and she said, I'm going to give you the business, Mom, and I'm going to close the dance studio and get out of the private practice and just so I'll have time for this baby. And I said, no, not quite. While you're at your law office, I will be tending that baby, my first and only grandchild. So we gave up that business, and I kept my granddaughter ever since. Love it.
Well, do you think your daughter aspires to be going to politics?
No, I think she's very, very opposed
No.
to being in politics herself. She's an excellent attorney and an excellent researcher, and she's got a very good job and a wonderful future.
Well, did she come to the Capitol to see you in action any?
Actually, she did. She even came down and was a page for me at one time. Yeah.
That would be fun.
Yeah. She was 15, I believe, and my son was, you have to be 14 to be a page. My son was never a page for me because he was too young. He was still 13, but he was a page later, and they both enjoyed it, but probably.
Well, who knows, though? You didn't think about it until later.
No, I
too,
really
so-
didn't think. In fact, I never actually had that as a goal. It was never a goal. It just happened.
Well, did
So
you
strange.
take government in high school?
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
A lot
she
of
did.
history and a lot of civics, government courses, yes.
And the PTA.
And the PTA. You get very involved. You spend a lot of time down at the legislature. And I was a standby substitute teacher for the schools. And I was the treasurer for the PTA, the statewide PTA. So it got
So the education bills that came through were
probably the strongest for me, yes. I had worked, and my husband worked for IRS. And so I had actually asked to be on revenue and taxation, which they did not assign me to. The speaker did not want me on revenue and taxation. But we had a lot of knowledge in that area, so I got to be a little influential anyway on some of those bills. But wow.
What was your last day in office like?
Oh, well, your last day in office, of course, is not during session. It's
Okay.
session's not in at that point.
Campaigning during the summer after you're
Right.
gearing up.
Oh,
Mine too.
we need a cookie.
But when you didn't win re-election, then what? Do you go back and collect your things from your office, or do you, when the session's over, do you clear stuff out of your office?
Actually, you can do it either way. You
Either
can clear it out, or you actually still serve until the next person is sworn in, which is like
Okay.
in January, just before the start of the
Okay,
next
so
session.
there's time then in there.
Well, no, they're sworn in November. We were sworn in right after we were elected. I was sworn in on November 21st or 22nd. So, yeah, you have 2 or 3 weeks. If you want to go down and get your things, you can. If you don't, you actually serve until they're sworn in. So, I think I had some constituent work that I did in that period of time, but very little, and so I just kind of cleared my office and left.
Did you have your own secretary, administrative assistant?
Administrative assistant secretary. We shared a secretary.
The two of you had one.
The two of us in one office shared one. Although all the secretaries were very helpful all up and down the floor. I can remember several times I would be there at 9 or 10, 8 or 9 at night, and I'm a horrid typist, just a terrible, terrible typist. At that time, we didn't have computers in the office. We had typewriters. And I would be down there going click, click, click. And another secretary, one of the secretaries was always working late. They would come from down the hall and say, "Can I do that for you?" It was just amazing. They would hear me a block away typing and know it was me and come and get my work and type.
Was it safe leaving the Capitol at that time of night, at 9 o'clock at night?
Usually, yes. The guards usually asked us. There was always a Capitol guard around who would usually ask us if we were leaving to have him walk us to the car.
It's nice. And your parking places were assigned too.
They were, and I had another female legislator, Sue Milton, friend there, who was often there with me. She was there that late a lot.
I can't find her. Do you have any idea where she
Yes,
is?
I do. I have her address and phone number.
Great.
She's in Las Vegas.
Well, I don't know if we can get there, but
I doubt it. Maybe. But yes, I do.
So you do keep in touch with a couple from
Yes, I do.
the time.
Yes, I do.
I think the other ones I had you serving with was Dorothy Conley.
Dorothy Connor.
I've interviewed her. Carolyn Thompson Taylor. Nancy Virtue. Penny Williams. Linda Larison. I haven't heard back from her yet either. Rebecca. And then Maxine.
Kinchlow.
Is that how you pronounce that?
Kinchlow. Maxine is
And then Freddie
passed
Williams.
away. And Freddie Williams.
And then Sue.
I knew Freddie Williams from the school board too.
So you knew quite a few women, and at one time that's a pretty good group.
That was a good group. It was. There were 29 Republicans, and that was the most Republicans that had been in the legislature since 1921. And there were, was it 10 women? 8 women. I was thinking it was 8, but it was 10, wasn't it?
With Helen counting in there, it would be 10.
That's right. There were 10, 6 Democrats and 4 Republicans. And we were all very nice, very friendly, fairly friendly. We disagreed a lot on political issues, but we...
Did you have to have a new wardrobe?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. You don't wear blue jeans. I actually didn't wear that many blue jeans, but I did wear casual clothes mostly. I had not been working for a couple of years when I ran and had to start over.
2-piece suits or 3-piece suits?
Really?
People said it was very cold in there. They had to.
It was.
keep
We would
something.
nearly freeze to death. Especially in the back rows. I never made it past the back row. That's a status thing in the legislature is that you start in the back row, the freshman, and you work your way to the front. The higher your seniority and your status in the House, the closer you are to the front. And I never got off the back rows. And that's where the cold really was. And I believe it's very warm when you get up to the front. I believe it's warmer when you get up there.
Well, was there a mouth of the house your freshman year?
A mouth of the house?
I've heard about mouth of the houses, but
Yes, there was.
I don't know if they do one every year. But
Yes, there was. I don't remember who it was. I'm thinking it might have been.
male or female?
It was a male. I'm thinking it might have been Dale Patrick. I'm not sure. Who was my office mate.
Oh, he's spoken enough for both of you then. Huh?
He did, and he had a beautiful voice. He had. I have to say, I didn't care anything at all for his brain, but he had the most beautiful voice. You could listen to him forever. We had 4 beautiful voices. I can remember that there were 4 men that I just loved for them to get up and debate something because their voices were so mellifluous. They were beautiful.
Who were the other 3 then?
One of them was Lauder. I can't remember his first name. I want to say Phil Lauder, but that may not be right.
Oh, I can look.
One was, goodness gracious, have I gotten old? I'm having brain glitches everywhere here. Crazy. There were 2 with that last name. I can sure see their faces.
Well, I can look to check.
I'll have to look those up for you because they had such beautiful voices. One was a representative from Guthrie and one was from somewhere in the southeast part of the state. And he had been a Baptist preacher and had the most beautiful voice to listen to.
I need to practice a lot then.
I hated to hear myself. I've always hated to hear myself on tape because I have such a twang and such a horridly
No, did you say?
tinny voice. But they had beautiful, deep, resonant, just beautiful voices. There were some I liked. I didn't like to hear what they said. I just liked to hear what they
Well, who swore you in? Do you remember? It was usually a justice, isn't it?
Yes.
Another glitch.
Another glitch. Yes. We did have a swearing-in ceremony, and it was a Supreme Court justice. Of course, my favorite justice was always Marion Opala, and I don't believe it was him. I may be wrong, but I'm thinking that it may have been Alma Wilson,
Female?
the female. There were 2 female Supreme Court justices when I was there. That was something, people asked us a lot if we experienced a great deal of prejudice because we got a few jokes and we got some remarks, but they were never malicious or even really serious. They were just humor. And, I think that there was a tendency by most of the men to treat us a little gently and courtly at first, and then when they found out we were pretty determined, they just said, okay, here we go. When they found out we were about as determined as they were, I don't remember any. I do remember that Nancy Virtue and Rebecca Hamilton had some women's issues that they seemed to sponsor legislation on. Other than that, I remember that the women pretty much sponsored the same kind of legislation the men did. They pretty much debated the same way. And we're pretty much treated like the men, except as I said for the party. We weren't invited out to the bars, all them. And maybe some of the others were. Maybe it was just me because I said, no, I'm going home.
Well, when you weren't doing your homework and all that good stuff, and you had time for fun, what would you do?
Usually the same thing I did before I went in the house. We visited with the family, or we had
No hobbies.
dinner, lunch with the family. Took my daughter to dance.
That's a hobby enough.
That's a pretty good hobby right there. Played with kids. Pretty much that. I didn't really have any serious, strong hobbies.
Mm-hmm.
I had a lot of family here, and I felt lucky to have them here, and I visited with them every chance I got. That was what we did.
Well, how many of that group showed up for your swearing in? Can't you have 3 or 4 people, or you can have as many as you want?
You can have as many as you want, and several. I'm trying to think.
Were your parents?
My family and my parents, yeah,
Well, that was
were
good.
there. I'm trying to think who else. Yeah, I'm sure that. I think we took the kids out of school and took them. It's always on a Tuesday. For some reason, or it was them. So I think we took them out of school too.
That's good.
Not that it hurt either of them to miss school.
Good
And little
students.
geniuses, yes.
Let me look at my list real quick and see if I've forgotten anything. Is there anything that I was going to ask you, what advice would you give females if they were interested in possibly running for office? What kind of advice would you give them?
Actually, I do that a lot. It seems that a lot of ladies do ask if they're going to run or if they're interested, And I tell them to, first of all, be sure that their family's supportive, because it does take you away from your family a lot. And you need to know that they're behind you and that you aren't going to damage your family relationship. You don't want to do that. You also need to know that where you stand on the issues. You need to know what you want to accomplish. I didn't when I went into the House. I really had some narrow ideas of what I could do, and it will broaden your outlook to find out how much government is involved in. My goodness, everything. They've got their hands in everything. And you need to know what you want to do, and you need to know what your limits are. You need to know how much you want to give, I guess. And I do tell them a lot, when you are running, make sure that the campaign runs on your agenda, not on somebody else's. You know, so because you got to fulfill it once you're in there. Don't make promises you can't keep.
How did the media play into that too?
Actually, the media didn't cover me at all, so I didn't have a media problem.
Okay. Easy answer then, huh? Okay.
About the only thing I can think of that, you know, to the victors go the spoils, and so the Democrats assigned all offices and seats and everything. And during my term, well, I guess in the first year of my term, there was a special election. A legislator died, and there was a special election. And the gentleman who won was a Republican. Well, there was no office space available for him that they wanted to give him on our floor. We were kind of all crammed into 2 people offices. And so they cleaned out a closet which backed up to the elevator and made a little office for this gentleman. And the media did cover this, you know, the new legislator coming in. And so I happened to be walking down the hall, and they grabbed me. It was Jennifer Eve. Do you remember her? I don't know. She was a newscaster here many years ago. Anyway, she grabbed me and she said, "Would you just walk into this office? We want to, you know, somebody to say welcome to Larry and everything," as he was coming in. And I walked in there and I thought I would die. That little office, I have a bigger broom closet, I think. And the elevator shaft came into the room and everything else. And I couldn't open the door because the desk took up too much room to actually open the door wide. And I just started laughing. You know, I just really got tickled. It was not a ladylike laugh. I was just guffawing, actually. And they did treat me nicely then. They did not put that on camera. She was photographing it, but they didn't actually run it. When they ran the piece, they left out my ridiculous reaction. So I was grateful for that.
Well, is there anything else I need to ask that I haven't? Anything you want to be sure we get covered that I haven't asked?
No, I can't really think of anything. It was kind of an interesting year. I mean, I really enjoyed it.
Well, my last question usually is then to when history is written about you, what would you like for it to say?
I guess just that I served as honestly and as nobly as I could.
That'll do it, won't it?
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you very much for your time. It's been a pleasure.
Well, thank you. I really enjoyed talking to you.